I think with this record, it came together at a time to where we had been touring a lot and sort of touring nonstop and working. We had made 3 albums in a row, and it was a really sort of exciting first chapter of the band's career that was kind of like beginning to slow down for a minute as we were getting back into the studio and getting back into writing mode at the end of 2019 when this song came around, Baby Blue Shades, a few of the others. And I just remember the focus being I just wanted to make music that really made us feel good and really made us all excited. And we wanted to just kind of get back to, not that we'd ever really departed from it, but get back to the core of just like writing and writing and writing because we had been in tour mode for a minute. And I think that it depends. Sometimes you get off the road and you can be a little bit burnt out, but I think at this point we had sort of finished up a touring cycle and the inspiration was just riding high and we were really excited about the music we were listening to and the possibility of making new music. And so that's just what we did. We started writing, just send each other demos back and forth. We'd start getting into the rehearsal room with each other and just start playing and kind of just like let the magic in the room sort of lead the charge. And at a certain point, towards the beginning of the following year in 2020, we had just finished another. We sort of made this record in a similar fashion to the way that we had worked in the past, where we'll write a handful of songs, write until we can't, book a couple of weeks in the studio, go in, track what we have there, take some weeks off, to kind of repeat the process like that. And so at the end of one of these sessions was the period to where we didn't really have the option to come back into the studio in a few more weeks. So that writing session, that writing period kind of stretched on and on for quite some time. And so we were just really sort of, I think, in this position of feeling really inspired and fortunate to be doing what we were doing in a time of so much uncertainty. And I know for me, just the making music and staying inspired was sort of like the thing that was really driving me as well as the rest of the guys during that period. And I think we wanted to make an album that we were going to be really excited to come out of that situation with and be able to play live, as opposed to sort of leaning into, I think, a lot of the solidarity and solitude and loneliness that was happening. I think we wanted to make something that felt exuberant and felt like we just wanted to connect with people once we had the time. And I think that's been really lovely. We've been back on the road now, fortunately, for the better part of this past year. And it's nice to feel those communal moments and just get everybody dancing and singing along with the new music. It's been pretty epic. That's a good question, and I think it's something that I had to go back and forth with myself on. The whole story here is the album, the working title for the record was based off of just, you get those composition notebooks, so like black and white notebooks. I don't know if it's the same over in the UK as it is in America, but it's like pretty standard. Just, there's always like the space in the front where you kind of like title it or put your name or whatever. So this was the book that I'd been writing a lot of the lyrics in for what would become this album. And I just sort of like off the top of my head, just titles like a moment of reflection, because that's to me was kind of what was happening, was I was just taking these moments to think. And anyways, so for a long time that sort of caught some of the other guys in the band's eyes, and we sort of talked about it. We're like, oh, that's kind of maybe a cool working title for the album. So I think that was the idea for a long time, and that's a line that kind of gets weaved throughout the album here and there, song to song, a moment of reflection. And so at a certain point I thought, it sounds quite elegant, it rolls off the tongue nice. I liked the way that it sounded and the way that it read and kind of what it stood for, but it didn't feel quite bold enough to me to encompass what was really being talked about within the entirety of the record. And so one day I was sort of taking a shower, getting ready to go to the studio and record some vocals, and I had that thought, it just popped into my head, apocalypse whenever, and I just kind of started laughing. And the reason why I was even there to begin with was back when I was real young, like I was a kid basically, making like a home movie with some friends. And we were just sort of making this funny movie about the apocalypse. This was like before even iMovie was really a thing that I had. So it was like we would have like a VHS camera and be editing it just like on the fly with the tape starting and stopping, like really janky early stuff. But that was sort of like an early foray into creativity for me at the time, was like starting to write music and then starting to make these fun like home videos with my friends. And our dad suggested we call it Apocalypse Whenever, sort of as a joke, or my friend's dad rather. And I didn't really understand the reference at that point, and then I went on to kind of understand it later. And I think that must have just been sitting in the back of my head for years, and then one day when it popped out, I went, oh, that's either the best idea or the worst idea. I'm not sure what it is yet, but I'm gonna talk to the guys anyways. And so I brought up the idea to them, and we went back and forth for a while. I kind of explained to them what I thought it meant and why that could be a good title. And I went back and forth. I was like, I'm sure, like I said, I was like, this is either great or horrible. And ultimately, I think it sort of was the perfect title in the sense that this album is definitely about the juxtaposition of certain feelings, like at a time when you might feel like, even zoom in a little bit, even in your own life, it might seem like everything's going absolutely wrong, but there's always a way to treat that and to look at it one of two ways. You can say, okay, you can succumb to the difficulties that you're facing in your own life and the challenges that life's throwing at you, or you can kind of adopt this attitude of just persevering and understanding the fact that all you can really sort of do in these moments is take a breath, push forward, do the best that you can do, and not be too hard on yourself. And so I think that the record, really, the title really, it means the latter of those two things, I suppose, as opposed to succumbing to the inevitable apocalypse of your life or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think overall, a few of the highlights from this new album that always come to mind is there's a song that the first song we released that I've mentioned a few times now. It's called Baby Blue Shades. That one always seems to get people really in a great mood, singing along. There's a lot of voices you'll hear whenever that song comes on. There's also a track called Life Was Easier When I Only Cared About Me that's like pretty surefire to get people dancing and singing along as well. And a song called Heaven Is a Place in My Head is sort of like, has a bit of this punk energy to it underlying, but it's also just a really fun melodic song. Like all of those moments, I can picture very clearly the reaction. It's always one of those things that you always look forward to those songs in the set, I think. It's been a really fruitful few years, and one thing I will say is I feel like in the time that's passed that's passed in between, let's say, when we made our second album, Disappear Here, that time between then and now, those past 6 years, I feel like, they say that you have your whole life to write your first album, and then you have like 6 months to write your second one. In our case, it kind of was actually a bit more like we had our whole lives to write our first two albums. They kind of happened as like a 1-2 KO, and like everything that I think I had experienced in my life up until that point got really channeled into those lyrics. And I feel like while we've been writing these albums, in the time since then and now, it's like I feel like I've been able to actually live an entire second lifetime, and like all of the things that have just been happening. I feel like I've been living so much life. Like there's just such a well of things to pull from, and I've been just writing so much music and so many lyrics, and I feel like I have so much to talk about right now, and we have so much to do musically. And so yeah, we're definitely in output mode right now, as well as taking some time off from the road. But ultimately, there's no stopping to the music that's going to be happening anytime soon. I would love to keep putting new music out as frequently as possible.